So, welcome to the show, John.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me this morning.
We've got a lot to talk about because you've been in radio and in broadcasting for a very long time. And we're going to talk a little bit about AM radio this morning because you and I were talking yesterday and you mentioned how really until the early 1980s it was the AM frequency that most people listened to, and now it's the FM. So talk a little bit about the history of AM radio and some of your memories of what we call spinning records that we don't do anymore.
Right. Yeah, when, of course, I got into radio, it's getting to be more years than I care to remember, but
or admit.
A long time ago, back in the 70s, actually. And, yeah, I got in. I didn't realize I was getting in on the tail end of something, but when I did, we still played records, 45 RPM records. And I think I was telling you yesterday that, and Greg can probably remember this too, at one point, if you were a DJ or, a radio announcer, you were incredibly busy. I mean, you continually, whatever went out on the air, you had to have it ready and ready to go. And so I can remember you really needed to be about at least 15 minutes. You need to be thinking about 15 minutes ahead of yourself, not just concentrating on what's going on right now, but thinking like what's going to come up here in 15 minutes. And of course now, computers have pretty well, taken over everything and you can pre-program everything. But back then you had a paper log in front of you and that told you all of your programs and everything. So you really had to pay attention to that. And, that's the way it was though. You played records and even your commercials were not programmed in a computer. You had to take care of those too.
The old cart machines.
Exactly.
A lot of handwork. Really. Records and cards.
You looked at the log, and it's like, wow, I've got a lot of commercials to play in this 30-minute segment or something. And so you literally reached over and pulled these cartridges. We call them carts for short, but cartridges. So they looked a little bit like the old 8-track tapes, similar to those. And you would pull those and have them ready. You usually have a big, tall stack of those things. And then, of course, you would take a break and you would load those into your machines and manually play them and then, play your music. And so, like I say, it used to be very, very busy when you were on the radio. Now, of course, you're still busy, but not like it used to be.
A lot of it's technology-based. Like you said, you can pre-program a lot of commercials and a lot of songs.
Yeah. Now, John, while a song's playing, you're waiting on the next song to come around. We're used to when the song was playing, you're pulling the other record off, putting another one on, queuing
exactly.
Up. There was no downtime, was there?
Very little, very little. And, of course, one of the reasons that I decided to get into radio in the first place, I thought, wouldn't it be great if you could play music for a living, because I've always loved pop. Well, I like all kinds of music, but especially just pop music, and always enjoyed listening to the radio. And I thought, wouldn't that be great to actually do that? Of course,
and here
I am. Yeah, been here for a long time, but you get into it. And it's like everything else. You realize it's like, wow, there's a lot more to this than I thought there was. There's a lot more to it than just playing records or playing music, So, but it's very interesting. It's been really fascinating, and met a lot of different people over the years, and some real characters along the way. I guess I don't know what it is about radio, but you tend to have some real strong personalities
in radio, which the best and worst.
And the worst, people. That's true. I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah.
I was going to ask you this later on in the show, but since you mentioned your favorite type of music is pop music, what's your favorite song of all the songs you've played over the years on the radio?
Oh, mercy.
What's your favorite song?
Mercy.
I didn't ask you this yesterday because I wanted an honest
Put me
answer.
On the spot. Yeah. Boy, that is a tough one. I would really have to give that some more thought. Of course, you've kind of refined it there a little bit. You said my favorite song that I have played on the radio, so that narrows it down.
Because as you know, if there's a particular song that's popular at the time and you're playing it on the radio every day, and if you don't like it, here's that song again. So, but if you do like the song that's popular at the time that you play on the station, then it's great.
Yeah, I really can't, honestly, I can't think of anyone that really sticks out in my mind. This one I didn't play, this was a hit before I ever was on the radio, but I always loved this song. It's an instrumental, and it was a little different This was a hit in, I think, 1968. And it's we still play it on WTLO. It's called Love is Blue by Paul Marriott in the orchestra. I assume he was French, I guess.
Love is Blue.
But they did sort of a pop version of that song. And that, to this day, is still one of my favorite songs, although, well, I guess I could say I played it on the radio because I played it as an oldie, after I got into radio, and we still play it on WTLO. So that's probably one of my favorites.
And WTLO, for those, again, who might not listen to our sister station, it's America's best music, America's favorite music.
Right.
It's 60s, 70s, 80s, a little 50s music I even hear sometimes.
Yeah, there's some in there, and used to be more, but of course, as the years pass by, you kind of move on into other decades there, so.
We definitely want to talk about Dial-A-Deal this morning, and Dial-A-Deal is the flagship show on WTLO, and it turns 40 years old this year. We've had Dial-A-Deal in Somerset and Pulaski County for 40 years, and it's a wonderful show. It's a buy, sell, and trade program, so if people have something they want to buy or that they want to sell or trade with someone for, they can call in every morning and talk to John and tell him what they have to buy, sell, and trade. And before we go to break, I want to ask you about the history of Dial-A-Deal, just a little bit, the progression that you've seen with the show throughout the years.
Right. Well, of course, this is not really, I guess, scientific. I'm pretty sure about this, but I'm not absolutely, 100% positive. But I think it was in 1974 when WTLO was purchased by a group of investors and business people here in Somerset. And Mr. Jim Brown, I guess Greg knows Jim, was the manager of WTLO, one of the owners and the manager. And to the best of my knowledge, he started Dial-A-Deal, I think, in 1974. So later this year, it will be 40 years. But as far as I know, Jim is the one who came up with the name for the program. Of course, there's a lot of call-in programs, just about all of the AM stations. They're
popular on AM
they're
stations.
Popular, yeah. And they all tend to have a program similar, buy, sell, trade, call-in type program. But he came up with the name Dial-A-Deal, which, of course, that was back in the day when you literally dialed a telephone.
Yeah.
So, and of course, we still call it that. So, but I've been on the air, as far as I know, for 40 years. Steady, I think, yeah.
You've talked to a lot of people on Dial-A-Deal throughout the years, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of John's greatest interviews, some of his most interesting interviews, and some of the characters that we have seen throughout the years on Dial-A-Deal. We have a great audience over there. You're listening to Mid-Mornings with Amy, presented by the Mole Hole of Somerset. Happy Friday, everybody. It's Friday, March the 28th, and we have as the guest in the studio on Mid-Mornings with Amy today, John Maggard. He is the host of Dial-A-Deal on our sister station, AM 1480 WTLO. Dial-A-Deal actually airs Monday through Saturday from 7:30 in the morning until 9 in the morning, but John is able to be with us today because House Calls with Lake Cumberland Regional Hospital is airing right now on WTLO, so he gets to join us for Mid-Mornings with Amy. Let's talk about Dial-A-Deal, John, because it turns 40 this year, and you talk with a lot of people every morning. A lot of the same people call in every morning. We love that because they're such loyal listeners to the show, and we love that. What are some of your favorite conversations that you've had with people on Dial-A-Deal over the years?
Oh boy, that's there's some real characters that occasionally call Dial-A-Deal, but of course, one of the people that he's no longer with us. He passed away sort of unexpectedly last year, but Mr. Paul Woodall used to call in just about every morning, and he wanted to be the first caller.
And your listeners wanted him to be the first caller. They expected him to be.
Yeah, because sometimes if he didn't get through, or he wasn't feeling well, or was out of town or something, somebody would call in and they'd say, "What happened to Paul? We haven't heard from him this morning." But Paul would he would sometimes, when you go on with the program, the phone lines are lit up and you have to make a choice. You just choose, whatever line. And if you didn't choose him, he would get upset.
You were in trouble.
He would get upset. Now he was cool about it, but he would actually get a little upset about it. But, it was always real interesting to talk to Paul, because you never knew, exactly what he was going to say.
And he passed away last year.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, unexpectedly last year. Yeah, he sure did. But there are actually there are a number of people, who are regular listeners and callers. But Dial a Deal, there's a lot of folks that listen to that program every morning, but they never call in. So and it has just an amazing, huge audience that's been loyal for a lot of years. There's people out there who have listened to WTLO. Since it's signed on the air, I guess back in the 50s, they sometimes will tell me, that they've been listening all those years. But, Dial a Deal, of course, like we say, has been as it is now. I'm not sure, they may have had some, similar type program before that, but Dial a Deal, known by that name, is celebrating or will celebrate 40 years on the air a little bit later this year. And, there've been some real, interesting folks. Now, one of the most interesting people on Dial a Deal wasn't a caller. It was actually a host of Dial a Deal. Greg will remember this person, and that was my good friend J.J. Johnson.
J.J.
Yes.
Johnson.
He was the guy was just a character. He was. I told him one time. I said, I really think you were meant to be a radio announcer. He had the voice for it. He had the personality, and he had the talent and the ability.
I tell folks all the time that not just locally, but in my opinion, J.J. Johnson was one of the best call-in radio hosts ever.
Absolutely.
Like in history. He was awesome.
Yeah.
And he was your predecessor, John, right?
Right. He hosted the program. He worked at, we worked together. That's where I first met him, was years ago at WTLO. And then, of course, I went on and did other things. He went on and did other things. But then he ended up back at WTLO just as I have. So
he trained me on Dial a Deal.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember.
Sure, yeah.
I remember you telling me that one time. But you could listen to him, and some of the things he would say would from far out in left field. But it was funny. He was really entertaining to listen to.
And made it up as he went along.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that can be hard to do.
Very hard because not everyone can do that and do it well.
Yes.
I'm not good at ad-libbing, but he was. So yeah, we've had some interesting callers and some interesting hosts on Dial a Deal.
And we have people who almost every morning call in with birthday requests, birthday shout-outs, and we love that. That's very much a part of Dial a Deal as well. Dial a Deal, as we said, it's a buy-sell trade program. What have been some of the most interesting items that people have called in to either to sell or that they want to buy that we can talk about?
Yeah. Well, let's see now. You put me on the spot here again.
I didn't want to set you up yesterday with all these questions because I wanted real answers.
I have a clear winner from my Dial a Deal experience.
What?
Somebody called up selling a cup that they got in Brazil, that I'll just put it this way, the cup was made out of a certain part of a bull's anatomy.
Oh, dear.
I remember that call.
Were they,
I remember. You don't forget a call like that.
No, that was the weirdest one I ever
they were
got.
selling this item.
They were selling this item. Yeah, they got it in
Yeah.
Brazil.
Yeah.
That was my weirdest,
Yeah.
easily.
Oh boy, right now nothing pops in my head. There's occasionally folks will call in and, we don't want to offend anybody or anything here, but, they'll say, I have this dog and, I would like to have my dog meet up with a male dog.
Meet up with.
Yeah. And
the kids say.
there are calls, you get calls like that. And it's, they're serious. And, but, those are kind of interesting because you think, should I say something? Should I interrupt or just let them talk, but, I'm sure after the interview here this morning, I'll think, I wish I'd thought of that. But right now, honestly, I can't. I think Greg's probably would top anything that I could think of. Anyway.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
Well, that's very much part of the charm of Dial a Deal. It's very conversational. You get to know these people who call in and talk to you, and they say hello to you, and they want to talk to you. So that's very much a part of the charm of the show.
Yeah, I've said for the longest time, a lot of people listen to as I said earlier, they listen. They won't call in, but they basically, well, of course, they listen to see if they can get a good deal on something. Of course, that's what it's called, dial a deal. But they listen for the entertainment value because, when you're talking to people, you never know what someone's going to say.
No, you don't. And that's what radio is. It's connecting people. It's making you trust the people that you're talking to every morning and that local community connection. And you do that very well on Dial a Deal. Anything else about Dial a Deal that you want to talk about that maybe we haven't mentioned this morning? Because again, it's been around for 40 years. It's got quite the history, some interesting stories, maybe personal stories from your experience.
Yeah, well, I just would like to say that folks will they'll call in and say, well, you do a great job and all of that sort of thing. And I've already mentioned, of course, Jim Brown, sort of the originator of the program, and J.J. Johnson. And usually when somebody pays me a compliment like that, I'll say, look, I am just trying to emulate, the people that I learned this from. And Greg, I always liked the way Greg did the program. Used to listen before I ever was host of the program.
And Greg, for those who don't know, did the program every Saturday for many, many years.
Yeah,
right?
And before that, I did it every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Yeah,
I've done a lot of dialing and dealing.
Three mornings per week.
Right.
He traded it off with another person who was here at the time. But I always liked the way Greg did it because it's very entertaining. And of course he has music playing in the background and everything, and I can't really handle all that stuff. I'm kind of simple and basic.
But that's okay because listeners like that. They like both of you at your different respective times.
Well, everybody everybody's different. And they have their own personality and everything. But that's really and truly that's all I try to do is try to do it. The way it's been done and done well for the most part, over all these years. So, I'm simply just trying to, do it like those that I learned it from. So,
wouldn't you say, John, that part of the success of Dial a Deal, and particularly our Dial a Deal program, is those regular callers that call in every day, and it's the fact that the people who listen at home, those regular callers are their friends, even if they've never met them. It's like they're your friends.
They expect them to call, just like they expect to hear you every morning.
Absolutely.
It's almost like I always like to say, it's just part of the Dial a Deal family, and that's kind of the way it is. And even though, I haven't. There's one individual, as a matter of fact, he called in this morning, Clifford Logan.
Clifford Logan, the poet laureate of Dial a Deal.
Exactly, of Pulaski County, I like to say, but. It's always good to hear from him, but and there are people who actually will call and say, if Mr. Logan's listening, I would appreciate it if he would call in with one of his poems this morning. We could really use a poem. I mean, that's special. It's just it's like being part of a big family. So that's the way I look at it. Is that anyone out there who is a regular listener, even though we may never hear from them. They are part of our Dial a Deal family. So
a great Dial a Deal family. And we have a great Mid-Mornings with Amy family, too. And thank you all so much for listening this morning. We are going to take a very, very quick break. And when we come back, we'll wrap up with John Maggard, our WTLO solo guy across the glass and host of Dial a Deal. We'll be right back. We've been happy talking down memory lane a little bit this morning, talking about WTLO and Dial a Deal with John Maggard. John, thanks for being here. And you're going to go back over to the AM, but I hope every once in a while you'll make a trip back over here because we've got a great Dial a Deal family that you've been talking about. We love you talking to them every morning and them being a part of our radio station here. Anything else that you want to leave us with? Any words of wisdom?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for having me. I feel like I finally made the big time. I've been on AM all these years.
You are big time, John. You are big time.
I'm here on FM this morning.
And I love your quote of the morning. Your most interesting callers sometimes want to have their dogs meet up. I love it. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you Monday.